Welkom bij de Alopecia Coach podcast. In deze podcast krijg je een interview te horen. En dit keer niet met iemand anders, maar een interview met mij. Want ik was de gast in de Australische podcast Hair Loss in Women van Bambi Stavely. Dus het is in het Engels, maar ik weet dat jullie het een interessante, leuke podcast gaan vinden. Dus ik hoop dat je heel veel plezier hebt met het luisteren ervan.
Hello, Evelyn. It's great to welcome you to the podcast all the way from the Netherlands.
Hi, Bambi. So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, you're a psychologist and a coach, and you specialize in hair loss, mostly female hair loss. Tell me how you made the transition from general psychology to specializing in hair loss, or did you start out with this specialty?
I absolutely did not start out with the specialty. The 18-year-old hair-losing me would be disgusted at what I'm doing now. Not because it's not necessary, but because, it was the worst thing for me happening. And me taking this much time voluntarily to work with hair loss would be something that, 18-year-old me, couldn't visualize at the time at all. I studied psychology, and I have a master's in social psychology, and then I always worked in professional development and organizing events and training events for professional growth.
Mm-hmm.
But 2.5 years ago, I realized that there's still so little mental and emotional support for women losing their hair due to alopecia. And I'm just not okay with that. I wasn't okay with that 20 years ago, and I'm still not okay with that. I have the education. I have 20 plus years of experience with hair loss, 10 plus years experience with wearing wigs. Being a psychologist is not the same as being a coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I trained for 1.5 years to become a really good certified coach. And then I was able to combine my experiences and my education. And now I'm doing something that I absolutely love.
Oh,
Who knew?
wow. Yeah. Who knew? I think 18-year-old me would have had a few raised eyebrows at where I've ended up as well. And there are so many women with hair loss who would just love someone to talk to, someone who understands what they're going through. It's a shame there aren't more people like you. Do you know of other alopecia coaches around the world?
I do. And I do see them becoming more frequent, which is good, One person I would really like to point out is a therapist from New York, Mijn. I talked to her as well, and I think she's doing amazing work. There's many, well, not many, not yet, but a few coaches like me that wear hair pieces, alternative hair, and help, especially women navigating that world. But she is actually setting herself apart by, she's also helping with women with wigs, but she made a decision for herself to not wear wigs or eyebrows or any type of alternative hair. And she's really trying to change, what we think of as normal.
Yeah, and that's just so wonderful to hear. So we'll put a link to her name is Mijn. We'll put a link to her information in the show notes, as well as yours, of course. And so what does a hair loss coach actually do?
Well, not one session is the same because everyone's different and everyone has different challenges regarding hair loss. It can either be, how do I tell my friends and family about this? How do I deal with romantic love in combination with me losing my hair and maybe wearing alternative hair or not? How can I still try to be myself and feel like myself when the image I see in the mirror is not at all recognizable? So there's a ton of things that come up, of course, but what we actually do is, the first thing I do is I listen. Like you said, I know what it's like to lose your hair. I know, of course, everyone's experience is different, but I really do think that I know from experience what someone's going through. And it's really nice to be able to lend just a safe space where someone can actually feel understood, recognized, not judged in any way. So of course, that's the first thing I do. And then there's many things we work on. We work on resilience. Alopecia is something that happens to you. No one wants this. No one chooses this. But the reality is that it's here. It's part of your life. And you're going to have to find a way to make the best out of this situation you're in. And that requires acceptance, not fighting the reality that you're in. And some people find that really difficult, and that can actually take a long time. So we practice radical acceptance. So that's about not only wanting to feel good and the good feelings, but also not shying away from despair, sadness, anger. All those feelings, they're also part of the deal.
Yeah,
So
they are.
I
And
try.
you talk about radical acceptance. How is that something that you can help women to come to terms, come to a place of? That would be sort of through the resilience that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think they work together,
Mm,
because what I see a lot in coaching is that, for example, people, we all know people that are actually really life-threateningly ill. And then a lot of women I work with think that or feel that they don't really have the right to be upset about just hair loss,
mm,
because they're healthy.
mm,
They can be 100 years old and they're losing people in their family or friends to cancer, for example. So they
mm,
feel like they don't have the right to actually feel what they're feeling. So they push it away. But that's not accepting what's happening to you, you
mm.
know?
Yeah, and I think there's some sort of layer of guilt that we possibly feel when we think about other people worse off than us, other people who have some other issue, and here we are feeling terrible or staying home rather than going out because of a lack of hair. I guess there's sort of a layer of guilt there somewhere, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I try to create a safe space where it's okay to address that guilt and actually lean into that. Why are you feeling that? And what would it be like if you could actually take a little time to just dip your toe into that feeling? And that toe becomes a foot, and that foot becomes.
Mm,
So
mm,
we take it step by step. And that is also like a bigger theme that a lot of my coaching clients struggle with, which is taking up space. And that's something I think a lot of women maybe struggle with. That's not even that related to hair loss, but I see that women with hair loss find it difficult and challenging to take up space, claiming who they are or who they want to be in this new situation that they're dealing with their surroundings. How are people going to respond if you decide not to wear hair? Or if
mm.
you decide to buy a long blonde wig, as I did, when I'm
Yeah.
not really that blonde or never had long hair. You have a lot to deal with. And a lot of people go, yeah, into their head,
Mm,
and have thoughts and negative thoughts and stress about that as well.
yeah. And tell me, what do you mean by taking up space?
It means, I think, first of all, knowing who you are. I know this from experience, and I always see this in my coaching sessions. When you lose your hair, you lose the way you look, right? Your expectations of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
image in the mirror, what society thinks women should look like if they're healthy and attractive and all of that. So it challenges you to create a new version of yourself, which can be really empowering. But
Mm,
first, actually, it's really scary and
mm,
sad. And, it's uncharted territory. So
mm.
taking up space means finding out who you are if your outside doesn't match your inside anymore. And that also gives you a great opportunity to learn about your inside. It happens, alopecia happens on the outside, but it also has a big impact on the inside of your head.
Yeah, sure. And is there something that comes up time and time again when talking to women with hair loss that you think women listening today might be able to identify with? And then, if so, what is your advice for that?
Yeah. Well, there's many things I could talk about now, but I'll keep it
Mm,
small, and I'll focus on. In Holland, we are very big on tough love.
hmm,
We touched on that subject before just now. There's many people experiencing way worse things than hair loss. So a lot of women are very strict with themselves. If they feel ashamed or sad or desperate or all that kind of stuff, they're very negative towards themselves. So they experience a lot of negative thoughts, and that's, you might have heard of that, the inner critic within
mm,
yourself. It's the like nagging voice you have on your shoulder,
mm,
that says, oh, you can do that, or come on, don't be such a wuss,
mm,
just put on your hair, come on, da, da, da. It can be helpful to listen to that voice. It can bring you a lot, but it can also stand in the way of actually accepting what's happening to you, because it doesn't want you to feel pain. And therefore you keep on going, but you never really stand still and experience what's happening to you and what's doing that to you, you know?
Mm,
So all those feelings, the tough feelings, you
mm,
push them away. So
yeah,
what I do in coaching a lot, I work with that inner critic.
that's great. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
what we would, we could all do with some help with. So it's fabulous that you're doing that. So what about your story? You mentioned that you started to notice your hair was thinning at about 18. How did you get from there to where you are now with your hair?
Well, it's been a long journey.
Mm.
Let me tell you. I'm 40 at this moment, so it took me a while. Well, at 18, my hair became thinner, and within a year, I had the diagnosis alopecia and then androgenetic alopecia. So I still had hair, and it wasn't very noticeable to people that didn't know me, but I noticed, you know, and my family noticed. But I pretended that it wasn't there. I was studying psychology, but all those tools I did not use on myself at all.
Okay.
I wasn't capable, didn't want to, was unable, I don't know what, but it was too close, too painful, too horrible. So my tactic was just looking the other way.
Hmm.
But on the outside, I was tough. I always made jokes. I was lighthearted, but on the inside, I was not at all. I was very scared, very
Mm,
lonely. I didn't know anyone experiencing this. I
mm,
also had the feelings of guilt that you talked about earlier. You know, there's a
mhm,
lot worse things going on. My hair should not be such a big deal. Two things. One, I ignored the problem on the outside to other people, but inside I was torn and looking for solutions. So I tried everything you can think of, from acupuncture to dieting, massages to
wow.
creams, whatever I could find. I did that for a long time.
Yeah.
After about 10 years, my sweet mother, who has always been very supportive, but for me also very annoying because she kept saying, you know, it is getting worse. Maybe we should look at alternatives. And I didn't want to hear that. After 10 years, I did because I was broke,
Mm,
because it costs a lot of money as well. So tired and just
yeah.
desperate. I didn't know what else to do. So I went to a hair salon and I tried on my first hairpiece.
Hmm.
And I thought I looked ridiculous. And it was the last place I wanted to be. But I think there I was up to the wall. You know, I was done. There was nothing more I felt like I could do. I didn't have it in me. And I think that's where my actually being able to accept what's happening to me started. Um,
Okay. With a little bit of acceptance.
yeah, and also actually seeing that there is another way. I don't have to do this alone.
Hmm.
Being in that hair salon actually normalized alopecia a little bit for me,
Mm, mm,
which made a big difference because
hmm.
they met a ton of people with alopecia just like me. I just didn't know them, but
Mm,
they were all around. But because it's still such a touchy subject and it's such a taboo still, yeah, I didn't know there were that many people that had the same issues as I did. So
yeah.
it took away the loneliness a little bit. I actually loved my hair after a while. I had
Okay.
way better alternative hair than I ever had naturally. You know?
Yeah.
That,
Yeah. So there was still a long way to go for you from that day in the hair salon to being the alopecia coach. So
yeah.
tell us a little bit about how that transition happened in your, I guess there were many years where you were wearing alternative hair and you were getting on with your life. But, as you said, at some point, you felt that there was a need, which you're definitely right, there certainly was a need. But for you, that must have meant, I use the term of sort of coming out, telling people, being prepared to publicly show people your or talk about your hair and your hair
Yeah.
situation and wearing hair. So, how did you manage that?
You're right. It took a lot of years to get there. And I never thought that this would be something I would be doing work wise. So I worked, like I said, I just worked in educational companies. And there were a lot of things that I was teaching other people that I was actually able to then project on myself as well. Also, themes like resilience, compassion, empathy, all
Mm,
those kind of things that are really healing and helpful to know about if you're dealing with alopecia.
mm,
So that happened over the years, and mindfulness and all those kind of things. And I had an opportunity when my second daughter was born, had a little free time. I was in between jobs. And that was one of those crucial moments that I thought, okay, what am I going to do? I have two little girls. I'm at the end of my 30s. And I really wanted to get back to coaching and the psychology side of me because I was being a little, more active in the corporate world, which I also really enjoyed. But I missed guiding and counseling people. And I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in Holland, there's a ton of coaches. Like everyone is becoming a coach. And I really lean into that as well because I just knew I love psychology and I love being really driven to get a result. And in coaching,
Okay.
you have the best of both. So
Yeah.
I thought, coaching is something that where I can really excel. And I think I would be really happy in a coaching job. And that's actually when a little voice popped up and said, well, you know what makes you really different and where you can really do some good work, where there's a lot of need. And of course, alopecia. And first I thought, oh, am I going to do that? Because yeah, it is like coming out, and my
Yeah.
friends and family know about my hair loss and that I wear alternative hair, but not my LinkedIn network, you know, not my
Exactly.
everyone on the streets. So it
Mm,
is really a big step. But for me, it felt like something I had to do. I was in such a good position to do it. I
mm,
had the experience, the education, I had all the mistakes as well. I did it the tough way, I think. And I can also teach people what that was like for me so they can make better informed decisions. So it doesn't have to take 20 years for them, hopefully, to get, where I am now. It was kind of something that I knew I had to do. And I guess I was a little apprehensive. On the other hand, I thought that's just something I'm going to have to deal with
mm,
because I can help so many people doing this and not even just the coaching and the one-on-one work I do, but also with the writing about it, talking about it, social media, the podcast like you are doing as well,
mm.
to normalize hair loss in women, take away the taboo and the shame of it and the loneliness. That is actually so a million times bigger than my little fear of coming out with my hair loss.
You could be telling my story as well, but just because that moment when I realized, oh no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to
Yeah.
talk about my hair loss to people. So the people on the street and the people in my community and network find out that I've been hiding something all this time. So I totally get where you came from. It's a funny how it's a very similar feeling, that sort of need to help everybody else, to go, look, this isn't that bad. If we can all pull together, let's talk about it. Let's see if I can help other people. You obviously have the same thought. Let's help other people. So
Absolutely.
and so again, you and I are in the same position in a way, but what does it feel like for you to embrace being someone with hair loss and, helping out your community? What does that feel like for you?
I really don't really have anything to compare it with. It makes me incredibly thankful. I'm actually one of those people that 18-year-old me would cringe at, but I actually feel at this moment that hair loss brought me more than that it took from me because it allowed me to look inside myself at a way younger age, I think, than
Mm,
my peers at that time. I was confronted with the fact that we're not permanent beings, and my hair was just the first thing to go.
mm,
So it gave me a lot of gratitude for the moments that we have here
mm,
and a really big drive to just enjoy the good things happening to you because I
mm.
was also able to tap into the bad things, and allow them to also be bad, that it's okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
teaching that to other people, I really hope that they don't have to embrace hair loss. That's not the point, I think, of what I'm doing. But
No.
they do, I would love for them to embrace their life and be
Yeah.
able to enjoy the moments with their kids, be at a wedding and, actually enjoy the company instead of thinking, oh, is anyone going to see that my hair's thin or, that I have a bald patch or because you miss your life doing that.
Exactly. How serious do you think the impact of hair loss can be on our mental health?
Extremely serious. Extremely serious. I think it's different for everyone, but I've worked with many women and I'm still trying to work with them, that are sick at home for a year or so. They don't go to work anymore, they cancel social activities. They
Mm,
become depressed, lonely. And it's not just them, right? It's their kids too. It's their spouses. It's their family. It's their colleagues. It has impact, not just on the person experiencing hair loss, on their surroundings very much.
Yeah. And if someone is finding themselves really focused on their hair loss as the thing they're thinking about all the time, and I hear women say that, how do you help people get out of that mindset? Or is there something you could say?
To try to not focus that much on it.
Yeah. How do you change that mindset?
Well, I think that's a skill. So the bad news is that it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take work. It's going to take repetition. It's actually like learning a new skill. But the good news is that you can learn a skill. So I think step one would be to analyze what you're thinking. Be aware of the thoughts and the things you're telling yourself. Because if you're not aware of what's happening, inside of your head, you can't really change it. So step one is, you can do that really easily. Every day you take 5 minutes, doesn't matter when in the day, and you write down, how am I feeling? What am I feeling in my body? What am I thinking right now? What is my mood? And the more you do that, the more you get in touch with, your inner world. So that would be step one. And then step two is analyzing your thoughts. Are you being mean to yourself? If you look into the mirror, what do you say to yourself? If you go outside, what are the thoughts that pop up in your head? Are you going to compare yourself to everyone, or what's happening? And then step three is to check if that's actually correct, what you're saying. There's many things you can do then, but also to learn how to objectively observe instead of putting judgment in your thoughts. So if you look into the mirror, you can think, yeah, I see, 2 eyes, I see a nose, and that's what you're objectively seeing. You can also say, oh, I see an ugly bulb, but that's judgment. So those are just some tiny things you can do. And one of my favorite exercises that I think your listeners might, enjoy as well. Try talking to yourself as if you were your own best friend, going through what you're going through at this moment. Because we're not used to talk, at least in Holland, we are not used to talking to ourselves like that at all.
No.
We put ourselves down. We're negative. We're strict. We're like the angry stepmom,
Yeah.
the fairy tales. But we shouldn't be. We should be our own cheerleader, And in the beginning, when you do that, it feels really unnatural. Like I said, it's so not a Dutch thing to do.
Yeah.
We're direct. We're tough. But when you learn to actually say, if you're feeling really down today, and that's really okay. But you can do this, honey. Be proud of how far you've come. Celebrate your tiny little steps that you're making.
Yeah.
That's such a different vibe, right? The energy is completely different.
It is. Well, that whole mindset approach is just so valuable. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And actually, it's been very insightful talking to you, hearing what you have to say. And I'm very envious of those women who get to talk to you as you as a coach, because I think it's wonderful to hear you talking. And I can imagine that you have such a positive influence on women's lives, and that is just so amazing. So thank you for sharing your story with us today and all of your wonderful skills. I really appreciate having you.
Bedankt voor het luisteren naar de Alopecia Coach podcast. Ik hoop dat je het leuk en waardevol hebt gevonden. Als dat zo is, zou je dan deze podcast willen volgen en willen raten met 5 sterren? Daar zou je me enorm mee helpen. Wil je een keer een afspraak maken om te kijken hoe ik jou kan helpen? Boek dan een gratis sessie op mijn website www.alopeciacoach.com. Ik denk graag met je mee. Tot de volgende keer!